listeners. We have with us today Lareina Yee, and she is a McKinsey Global Institute Director leading the technology agenda, the global head of tech alliances, and the co-author of the exciting new book, The Broken Rung, When the Career Ladder Breaks for Women and How They Can Succeed in Spite of It. Lareina, I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you, Julie. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh my gosh. So let's start with what prompted the book. You have been at McKinsey, deep in lean in research and all the things over the years in the Women in the Workplace report, which I always affectionately joke is like my Christmas morning when I get that present to open and see what's changed and hope that things have changed for the better. But you've been a part of this book for a long time, and the broken rung has persisted for years. I'm curious, what prompted writing this book with you and your colleagues?
Well, Julie, I think that as you mentioned, I co-founded Women in the Workplace over 10 years ago. And in a decade, we just celebrated the 10th anniversary of the research. We have seen improvement, but not substantial improvement. And in all those years, I've heard so many stories about instead of the downside, the upside. The women who, against the odds, have made it work, the tactics that they're using. And for me, the book is really about understanding the problem. How do we just make all the solutions transparent to women? There is no reason that the strategies and tactics for success in one's career should be a secret. And so that's really the genesis of the book is simply said, the book I wish I had, when I started my career or in moments where I felt like I needed help or a pivot or a push.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like these hidden ingredients that we're fighting against all odds, like we're superheroes or some sort, the women that make it through that persistent broken rung. So I love it. I think this is a really great updated I know Lean In had its challenges, but really an updated kind of lean in type of book for women to say, hey, here are the strategies that work. Here are the things we know from the 10 years of research, right, that can help us navigate this broken rung scenario. So I'd love it, Lorena, if you shared a few of those strategies, and maybe what your favorite strategy is for women to navigate.
Yeah. Well, I think also just to step back, what is the broken rung? A lot of people know about it, but some people are still pretty shocked. So, whilst we all look at the top and the glass ceiling, which is really understood, what we have found, as you mentioned for years, is that the problem starts at the very entry level. And so, for every 100 men who receive that first promotion opportunity, the odds of advancement for women are 81. So for every 100, 81 women see that. And in all the years we've been doing the research, we've seen that number bounce around. But at the end of the day, over a decade, it's largely been the same. And that first kind of lack of parity continues to persist. And that's kind of the ground that women lose over time. And that has an impact on your long-term opportunities, on your financial stability, and quite frankly, in some cases, your confidence. And
Yeah.
so, this is a big thing. And and so, that first promotion, which is so exciting, that first step up, we see women just don't get a fair shake. That's the premise. The solution is something that we've introduced that's new, which is 50% of a woman's lifetime earnings come from something called experience capital. And for women, this is particularly important because, Julie, as you and I know, women outperform in school. They are getting more of the Bachelor's of Arts degrees in the United States. Oftentimes, they are graduating with higher GPAs, but that work piece isn't as clear. And so, whilst women do really well in school, 50% of their lifetime earnings is what they learn on the job. And that's the premise of like the strategies and tactics. So, one of my favorites is to stay in the power alley. And this is to make sure that in your career, at some point or for the whole time, you have a P&L role or a profit and loss role, that you are at the heart of what makes money for a business and you understand at the core what that looks like. And having that experience is invaluable.
Mhm.
And 95% of Fortune 500 CEOs, last time we looked, had come from P&L roles. And so
Yeah.
don't limit yourself too early. You don't know if you want to be a CEO. You don't know how far you want to rise up in that organization. So
Hmm.
that's one tip.
I love that. I know that really resonated with me as I was going through some of the strategies. And for listeners, definitely pick up the book. But some of these strategies, like, it is the company, the reputation of the company really matters. I know we keep going back to this risk aversion that tends to be baked into the socialization of gender for women, but leaning in, if someone taps you on the shoulder and says, "Hey, this is an opportunity, go for it," that whole 60% stat. We if we don't have at least 60% of the qualifications, right? That was in the book too, a good reminder
Absolutely.
don't apply. So, and we
Yeah.
need our allies too. We need that networking piece, really resonated with me. As I think back, Lorraine, it kind of gave me flashbacks to my early career 20 years ago.
Um,
And like many women, I'd done all the things. I had the high GPA, I'd gotten the job at a Fortune 50 company, I was in the leadership development program, all the things, right? Checked all the boxes. And it was instant. I realized I was the only woman. And you're
mhm.
right. It was as much as I know I participated in this narrative, right? It's not just it happened to me, but last one to get promoted, despite higher performance ratings. Um, the salary when I ended up leaving, because after 4 years, it was just, I'd sought out the operations role that women were precluded from, and I had to negotiate and navigate and advocate for myself to get the necessity to do that and the P&L responsibilities. And even after all of that, you kind of looked up and you're like, I don't see anybody like me. The values are so different than my personal values, and I'm burnt out.
Yeah.
And that was a long time ago, listeners, so I hope that's not a depressing narrative, because these strategies would have really helped me see through that then that one of the things I think is most powerful in the data that you all provide is it's not just me. It's not
No.
just me that's having this problem. Like there's so many of us, and we're so much more powerful when we work together and use these research-based strategies. I'm curious, as you kind of, there's such a wonderful collection of stories in the book. If there's a story that kind of paints the narrative of, women in the 2020s now and their careers, what one do you think like tells an accurate picture of where we're at right now?
Oh, it's so many stories. So one is a woman named Julie Morgenstern, and her story has lots of different pieces. So she started in the performing arts, and she had her first daughter, and she's on maternity leave. And she's sitting in her apartment in New York. And for years, she thought because she's in a creative industry, it's okay to be disorganized, to kind of be more open-ended and to kind of fly by the seat of your pants because she's in the creative industry. And in that small window, and for listeners who have children, you'll remember those first couple months. There's a small window when you can get out in New York City and take a walk in a stroller with your baby before you got to get back. And she missed the window. She was so disorganized. And she took that, she looked at her daughter's face and she took that and she said, "We have got to do this better." And it's an example of a soft skill that's a hard skill. So here's the best part of the story. She becomes so good at what she wasn't good at that she not only wrote like two or three New York Times bestseller books, she started her own company and advises and coaches women and men on how to think about their executive operating model. And so, what I love is we have that in kind of the chapter of soft skills or hard skills. Like, this is a thing about the skills that matter, but it's also about entrepreneurship. And it's also about something you're not good at doesn't need to be a permanent thing you're not good at. And I think a lot of us, maybe not in the beginning, but even in the middle of our career, realize we can get really good at these things. And
Mhm.
maybe they become actually the axes of other opportunities. And like there's so much I love about her story, and she's a terrific friend. But another thing is she took a risk in starting her own business. And one of the things that we talk about is the value of big, bold moves. And Julie, you've taken these as well, and many of your listeners have. But the definition is where your new job has a 25% or more skill distance from what you are doing.
Mm.
And we know that those big, bold moves, that bet on yourself, hugely pays off. So that's just one story, but I love it because it has
Oh,
lots of elements of this in it.
ah. Well, and the caretaking translation, you have some data
Mm,
on that of like what we learn as caretakers, which still today, present day, the majority of caretakers are women.
yes,
That's transferable to the workplace.
yes,
Organization skills, communication skills, negotiation skills, like project management,
absolutely.
all this stuff, running a household P&L. Like it's always wild to me that we don't see that transfer because men tend to not do those things. It doesn't tend to be as valued as many things in corporate seem to be. But I love that story, and that resonates with me too. That was the end of my corporate career. Having a baby was it was just so hard to do a work that didn't feel to have purpose and leave somebody that had such tremendous purpose in your life. And we know those caretaking years, those childbearing years are particularly troublesome for the broken rung too.
They're
Um,
really hard. And they are one of the things that we talk about in the book is planning for the inevitable. You shouldn't be surprised. One of the things we talk about is how can motherhood not be kind of a decelerator in your career? And certainly with Claudia Golden and all the amazing research that she's done, we see that, 70% of the jobs are not actually posted. And women who have children, there's a complete bias against them. And all of this is documented, but the kind of trying to find the bright side of it, or, how do you find the opportunity amidst something that is hard? Um, there's an amazing story, and this is a woman in San Francisco, and she's a friend, and I actually met her. We were preschool parents together, and she was a big bad lawyer at Yahoo, and everything going for her. I mean, and she decided with the dual career family to really raise these three amazing boys. And after 14 years doing that full time, she said, I would like to go back. And she would like to go back for a lot of reasons to be a role model of different types of family structures for her boys and also for herself. She's like, I still have a lot in me. So she went back on a reboarding program at LinkedIn. She's now like a rising star there. And, that is really, really hard. And I think it takes a lot of guts to bet on your potential and say, like, my round trip ticket as a mother isn't necessarily a 6 month round trip ticket. Maybe it's 14 years. Maybe it's 3 months. Maybe it's a year. But the idea that you're like, I still have the ambition and I still have like the energy and the youth in me to like
yeah,
still go for it. I just
yeah.
find it really inspiring.
Yeah. And I suspect there's going to be so many more of those stories. I love that story for so many reasons because it's
Yeah,
unconventional. We don't talk about those stories. But with the aging population, the retirement rates, the lower birth
exactly.
rates, we're going to have to get a heck of a lot more creative with career paths and timeouts, and returns and welcoming people back into the workforce. So I just love that threading of personal and professional and making it work for you. Two things that I took from the book that were really interesting to me, Lareina, were one, technology, right? We know the tech industry, right? Just so many
Yeah.
industries. It was so
So much to
interesting.
say on that.
It's like so much, right? Like so much. It
Yeah.
used to be women used to be programmers back in the beginning, but once they realized they were important roles, like it's not
Yeah.
so much. It's just such a fascinating industry to me. And we still have a problem, right? A self-selection problem with women entering the industry. So we have a pipeline problem by nature. But you make a good argument for folks to, it's never too late to learn those skills.
Yeah.
That and entrepreneurship. So I know those are two separate chapters, but I found both of those fascinating to really think about maybe areas of your career you haven't pursued or haven't thought of yourself as a technologist or an entrepreneur, but how
Yeah.
could you kind of weave those things in, knowing they're going to be so necessary in the future job
Uh,
market?
oh, thank you. It's like my favorite chapter. It's very personal since I'm in our tech sector. So, I mean, the technology gap for women starts super early. It starts in school. Some people would say it starts all the way in the math class in fourth grade when or fifth grade when you start to see confidence levels drift between girls and boys. So, but, certainly if we kind of zoom to college, Over the last decade or so, we have seen that women in the United States, and this is actually an exception, it's not a global phenomenon, but in the United States, women with STEM degrees or computer sciences specifically are like 22%, and women with technology, really sort of technical skill jobs, 26, 27%. So it's like incredibly low. And then, Julie, you're kind of looking at me like this is depressing statistics, but the upside is this whole
It just
point.
hasn't changed for
Yeah,
so
yeah.
long. I get
I mean,
so
it hasn't changed.
frustrated.
It's like it's its own issue. But here's the thing. This whole concept of experience capital, what do you learn on the job? And if anything with AI, becoming a power user and being able to use technology in your job is made easier with the way that AI works. And we know that for, all occupations, we're going to see a dramatic shift with AI. We know that in other research that I led this year, that 70% of employees in the United States already expect that
Mm.
30% or more of their job can be done by AI. So we're already there. So, you've got to give yourself the advantage of learning how to refashion your job with AI. Take nurses. There are plenty. The good news is we don't have enough nurses in the United States. It is a job occupation that is mainly kind of predominantly women, 87% women. But here's the thing, 30% of a nurse's job could be refashioned with AI. So instead of waiting for that to happen, become really good for it. Sign up, invest in it, make it a habit. Do all the things to take initiative. Or if I just simplify it, be like Carly Kloss, who is our kind of hero story feature, which is 10 years ago. She was she was modeling and she had no need for computer science, but she realized that the most interesting entrepreneurs that she was meeting, these founders, they all could code. And she taught herself how to code 10 years ago. And then she found it was so important that she founded a nonprofit to teach women and girls how to code. And so I just, so much you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. Lorena, as we were talking about these strategies, while they are geared towards women because they are specific gendered issues that tend to face women as they progress in their careers, it's also important that, we address this with men and men are educated about these systemic issues, especially since more C-suites, as your report continuously shows us, are still predominantly men. They're nudging up, right? Um, but I'm just curious. I love the idea as we were kind of prepping for this interview about a book swap kind of idea. That's
Yeah.
something I'm personally working on a new book about people with power and how to be better allies. So that's something I've been percolating on is how do we get these books that are really for women, but it's men that need to help remove some of these barriers and they need to be educated about this so they can be better allies too. How do we reach them with this material?
Well, a couple of things. The topic we were just talking about, technology and AI specifically, that is equally an opportunity for men and women. I mean, AI is what, 2.5 years kind of old on the scene. You're not behind. Everyone needs to learn to be a power user of every industry. You don't need to be able to create an LLM. You need to be able to use this. So applies to men and women. The networking, the multiplier effect advice applies to men and women. Have a board of directors steering your career. So I think, first of all, for men, I do think there's a ton you can get out of the book for your own career. But if you're a man in power, there are a couple things you can do to pay it forward. Number one, give this book to a woman whose potential you believe in. Just pure and simple. Pick someone you're like, you are talented, you are amazing, you are in my kind of, organization. I'm going to give you this book. And Julie, that's that tap on the shoulder. That is
So
someone
powerful.
saying,
So powerful.
right? I believe in you. I
Hmm.
believe in your potential. I believe you can do great things.
Hmm.
Secondly, elect yourself a member of that woman's board of directors, you know, and then I think, the next thing is see how, you live into it on a daily basis. If a woman, we know women often get interrupted, mistaken for someone more junior, there are many things that can happen in that moment. And Julie, you and I looked at this bust that bias. Be
Yeah.
right there and say, wait a second, Julie, can you come back into this discussion? Because you made a really interesting point before Sam interrupted you.
Yeah.
Simple acts make a huge difference.
It does. Yeah, I often look at allies as mirrors, like they help us see things sometimes we haven't yet seen in ourselves. And that's why I really love the book idea. And if we do have men with power listening, that is such a solid thing you can do. You don't have to read the whole book cover to cover, right? You can look at key chapters that maybe remind you of the person you're wanting to mentor or sponsor or advocate for and say, hey, this chapter reminded me of you. I'd love for you to read it and like circle back with me. I'd love to talk about like process what you're thinking with this or what could we do better as an organization, right? What I'd love is for these books that are designed for individual changes to lead to systemic changes. And you and I know that's those barriers are tougher. And these headwinds are very real. And so I hope, I have an 11-year-old, so I selfishly hope that we're taught the conversation is different when she enters the workforce. I keep hoping. I'm curious, Lorena, for you, what are you hoping for the future for women in the workplace, given that you've been such an integral part of researching and studying it for decades now?
Well, I'm like, decades. I think first of all, I was reflecting on my early experiences in the workplace, and I do objectively feel it is better. But system changes take time.
Yeah,
Any type of system change, it's not a quarterly sort of action. It's more than a year. It's one of the things is people say, what are great companies? Like, what do you see? And one of the
yep,
things I see in great companies that really champion meritocracy and equality is a multi-generational commitment. And what I mean is multiple CEOs, not just one, but like two or three CEOs have committed to an agenda. They may have executed that in their own way, but they are moving the culture and their company forward as and so it takes time. So I think one is I'm confident it will be better for your 11-year-old, but I don't think it's just on autopilot. And if
yeah.
you're in the workforce, like you and I, we can't wait 10,
Mhm.
15 years. So we need those strategies that we can do individually against the odds.
Yeah. Ah, I love that. I love that. What a powerful message to wrap up with. Lorena, thank you so much for all the amazing research and work you do and setting such a strong example for other women to learn from and to model. Part of this is modeling. We need our role models, and I'm thankful that you are one for us.
Oh, well, Julie, thank you so much for having me on and for just being an advocate of all our research and helping. It means a
Yeah.
lot.
That link has been shared more than a few times in my Forbes column. I will say it's like, oh, do you need this
Exciting.
business case again? Do you need it again? Yes, here you go.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, it's an important reminder, and your work makes it very easy to digest and process. Tell our listeners where they can get Broken Rung the book and follow your work.
Yeah, so you can get it at Barnes& and Nobles. You can get it at Amazon, and McKinsey.com has all the links. And there's a website, and you see me like embarrassed almost because I'm so bad at self-promotion, but it's like a completely gendered stereotype.
We
So I'm
we
like
we study the things we know
struggling
we
through it.
need.
Julie's like, let me help you with your book. Um, so www.brokenrung.com. But Harvard Publishing has been super generous and so supportive. So there's also smaller, bite-sized bits of it that you can also find as well. So
Well, I highly recommend it, listeners, and we want to hear what you think. So, brokenrung.com, check it out. Thanks, Lorena, for being with us today.
thank you, Julie.